Good afternoon to you all. Welcome to Quiz Cymru. I hope you're ready to spark an interest in Welsh culture with Amgueddfa Cymru, Museum Wales. I'm Sue Richards from e-sgol, and joining me today is Danielle Cowell from Amgueddfa Cymru. Now then, I'm sure a lot of you have been joining the Kahoot quiz already. Yes, there you are. We will be doing the whole session through Kahoot, and you can participate in pairs, as a group, or as a class. So learners, join now using the QR code or through the link to the website and enter the PIN. Now then, the quiz is based on stories from Museum Wales. There'll be 3 stories with 4 questions after each story. So 12 questions in total. Learners, you were responsible for managing the smart devices, not your teachers. So do listen carefully. Now then, teachers, if your learners reach the top 5 at the end of the quiz, take a picture of them and send it to me with the nickname, the name of the class, and the name of the school to appear on the results table, to be in with a chance to win a contribution to the cost of a bus to get to the final round of the quiz at Sain Fagan. Now then, welcome, Danielle. Prynhawn da, how are you today?
Hello. Hi,
Danielle,
Sue-Ann.
how are you?
Good, yeah, great to be here and amazing to see so many schools online with us today.
It is great to see everyone, isn't it? Ready to listen and to answer the questions. And make sure that you're listening now, learners, to what Danielle will be saying. Right then, Danielle, I think we'll
Okay,
start.
brilliant. So,
I'll just say, Danielle, before if learners haven't had a chance to join, the code will stay on the screen for a bit so they can join in when they're ready. Diolch, Danielle.
thank you. Hi, Shemai pawb. Hello, everyone. As Sue-Ann's already said, my name is Danielle Cowell. I'm a digital learning manager for National Museum Wales, and this means that I work with all our museums across Wales. You can see on the map there now that we've actually got 7 museums. I'm sure some of you have probably been to some of them. If you haven't, please do. So in the north, we've got the Slate Museum. In the west, we've got the Wool Museum. And you can see all the other museums on there. Today, I'm presenting from St Fagans. Again, this is probably the one you're most likely to have visited. So our role at the museum is to look after the treasures and the collections of Wales for the people of Wales. So that's you, all of you in your classrooms across Wales. All these treasures belong to us all. And within those collections and within those museums, we've got lots of different types of collections. So in Big Pit, obviously, you're going to go underground and you're going to learn about the mines and the mining industry in Wales. In National Museum Cardiff, we've got art collections, science. In the Roman Museum, we've got history. And then here at St Fagans, we've got lots of different houses from across Wales. And it's important to say as well, we are still collecting the history of Wales from the different and diverse communities living in Wales today. So if we go to my next slide now, because my first story is going to be from the National Roman Legion Museum. If you've not been to this museum, it's very near to Newport. It's the second oldest museum in Wales, and actually we had a big party last year to celebrate being 175 years old. And if we go on to the next slide, you can see the sort of things school pupils get involved with and the things they can see in Caerleon. So you've got a Roman amphitheatre, a Roman baths. You can dress up in armour and you can look around the museum. But if we go to the next slide, Shuan, we'll see what Caerleon looked like around 2,000 years ago when the Romans came to Wales and when they came to Caerleon to build this big fortress town. In the middle there, you can see the amphitheatre, which looks quite small in comparison to this big building next to it, which is like a big soldiers' barracks where we know around 5,000 soldiers lived in Caerleon. And in the next slide, we can see how this big force of soldiers was organized and how they were really prepared for battle and how they would march and attack the local Celts. So this in the next slide now, you'll see the amphitheatre and how it looks today. But we're going to be talking about a story 100 years ago when an important archaeologist came to Caerleon and did an excavation of the amphitheatre. They did a dig to discover what was there. And in this black and white photograph, you can see what a dig or an excavation looked like at the time. So trained archaeologists were leading this dig, and you can see some men there that were involved in the digging. And you can even see that there was a small railway line put in, and that's because they had to remove 30,000 tons of soil to explore what was underneath. So in the next picture, I want to talk about the archaeologist, the person that led this dig. I'm sure you've all heard of Indiana Jones. Maybe you've seen old films on the TV, and that's maybe what you think of as an archaeologist. But 100 years ago, you may be surprised to hear that the archaeologist leading the study was a woman, and her name was Tessa Wheeler, and that's her in the picture there. And she led a big team of men who were excavating. Now, the excavation was begun by her husband, who actually started the excavations, and he was the museum manager in Caerleon at the time. But then he was offered a bigger job in a London museum. And as Tessa was part of the team and an excellent archaeologist, she agreed to take on leading this dig. And it was so big and so interesting at the time that the newspaper, the Daily Mail, that you might have heard of, they wanted daily updates on what was found at this dig. And they offered Tessa £3,000 for these updates. And then, I mean, Shuan, do you want to kind of have a guess of how much £3,000 is in today's money compared to 100 years ago? It's a tough question, I know, putting you on the spot.
So you said 3,000.
Yeah.
Let's say 30,000 then.
30,000. Yeah, it's a lot more than that. It was actually 240,000. But the figure that's important for you all to remember is 3,000, okay? Because that is what was actually paid to Tessa at the time. So she was under a lot of pressure to get this news out each day. If we go to the next picture, we've got an illustration of what an amphitheatre would have looked like. Sue-Ann, does it remind you of anything that we have today?
Well, to me, it reminds me of the Principality Stadium in Cardiff.
Excellent, yes. So stadiums today were very similar to amphitheatres. So this amphitheatre was built so it could sit the 5,000 soldiers, firstly, but also it was to put on shows. So you'd have gladiators fighting in the middle of the ring there. There'd be all sorts of different things going on. We know that, we had animals fighting there as well. And Tessa found lots of different things. So she found lots of different animal bones, hairpins, spoons, brooches, pottery. And you can come and see all of these exciting things at the museum. or by exploring it through our 360 online. But the object I want to tell you about doesn't look that exciting. If we go to the next slide. And it's a bit of a strange object, and I don't expect anyone to really know what that is from just looking at it. I'll give you it's sort of about this size. So it's a little piece of lead, and it's actually called a curse tablet. And it were on a curse tablet, a soldier or a gladiator would write down a curse that they would lay at the feet of the goddess Nemesis, who was a Roman goddess of revenge. Okay. Now, people didn't have police or anything at the time. So in a way, writing a curse down was a way of letting go of perhaps your anger about something that had happened to you. And on this curse, you can see there the cursive script, which is an old type of writing. Obviously, this is going through English and Welsh as well. But those kind of scratchy lines that you see, they've all been analysed. And basically, this is a curse to someone who stole my boots and coat, and it's from a soldier. And losing your boots and your coat at the time was really big. It was a big part of your wages. You couldn't just pop to Primarni or Amazon to get some more. You'd have to perhaps save a couple of months for those. And it was found in the gladiators' waiting room at the amphitheatre. So gladiators famously prayed to the goddess Nemesis, because the Romans had lots of different gods. And this is on lead because it was easy to scratch into and it lasts a long time. So, which is how we've managed to find it. And talking about lasting a long time, this small piece of writing here is actually the earliest bit of writing ever found in Wales. So it's the oldest writing in Wales, and that's a really important thing to remember. So just to summarise, because we've talked about loads of things there, I mentioned about the museum in Caerleon near Newport, the archaeologist who was called Tessa Wheeler that conducted the excavation, the Daily Mail newspaper that paid £3,000 for the story, and that we found the oldest writing in Wales that's ever been found. So we're ready for the quiz now, Sue-Ann.
Oh, great. Thank you, Danielle. Right. If everyone is ready on their devices, we'll move to the first question out of 4. Where is the National Roman Legion Museum located? Caerleon near Newport, Carmarthen, Aberystwyth, or Cardiff? Now you'll have to think back and remember what Danielle's been talking about. Where is the National Roman Legion Museum located? Yes, it's in Caerleon near Newport. Well done, good start. How is the scoreboard looking after the first question? Ruby Swan coming out on top. Well done. Right, so we'll move on to the second question. Who was Tessa Wheeler? A gladiator who fought in the amphitheatre, an archaeologist who led the excavation of the amphitheatre in Caerleon, a film star in Roman movies, or a chief female soldier in the Roman Legion? Yes, well done. She was the archaeologist. Brilliant. Right, third question. How much was the Daily Mail willing to pay for news about the excavations at the time in 1926? Was it £30, £300, £3,000, or £30,000? Remember, back in the day, at the time. Let's have a look then. How did you do? Oh, well done. Yes, 344 of you got that right, saying it was £3,000. Well done. Right, fourth and final question for this round. Why is the lead cursed tablet, sorry, lead, isn't it, Danielle?
Yeah,
Lead
lead.
cursed tablet found in Caerleon, so important. It was used as an entry ticket to the amphitheatre. It was a music box with a Roman song. It was a shopping list for the soldiers, or it was the earliest writing found in Wales. Yes, well done. It shows the earliest writing found in Wales. How is the scoreboard looking after the first 4 questions then? Zealous Leopard at the top, knowing Kosowari, Ruby Swan, well done you all. Great first round. Thank you, Danielle. We'll move on to the second round.
Okay, so we're staying with the Roman Museum for this next story. So if we go to the next slide. So in the museum, we have a curator who looks after the Roman artifacts, and his name is Mark Lewis, and he's the guy that's kind of going like this. Mark's qualification is in archaeology, so he's an archaeologist like Tessa Wheeler. So in 2010, when students from Cardiff University ran a dig, Mark was there as part of the team. So this is about 15, 16 years ago. And when people dig, as you know, they take out lots of soil. And they kind of put it in a big pile. And Mark kind of just went along to check what the students are doing. And he noticed a stone in the soil, and he just picked it up to check. And when he turned it over, he saw that it was actually a carved sculpture. Now, Sue-Ann is going to show you a 360 of the carved sculpture. So she's going to give it a bit of a twirl first, and then I'm going to ask Sue-Ann some questions. So what you're seeing is a 360 of that stone. So we scanned it, and we've had it 3D printed and things. But this is a sculpture that was made by the Romans about 2,000 years old, okay? And it was carved out of sandstone. So now I want everyone to imagine that they are archaeologists examining this. I'm going to ask Sue-Ann questions, but I want you to think of the answers in your classrooms as well, either in your head or together. So my first question is there's no right or wrong answers to any of these because, we don't 100% know the answer. But I'm going to go with what our archaeologist thinks it is. And it tends to be what lots of people come to the conclusion of as well. So we'll see. So first of all, do you think this is a woman or a man, Sue-Ann?
Personally, I would say it's a man.
A man. Yeah, that's what most people go with, is because they've got longish hair. Some people get a bit, they're not sure, is it a man or a woman? But the body looks more like a man to me. And are they wearing clothes?
It doesn't look like they're wearing clothes.
No, it doesn't, does it? It looks like you can see the man's chest and his arms.
Yeah.
How would you describe his hair? Is it sort of straight or curly?
Oh, I would say it looks curly, about down to shoulder length.
Yeah. So based on those few things and maybe what you know a little bit about Romans and Celts, would you guess it as a Roman or as a Celt?
Oh, good question. I don't know if I know enough, to be honest with you, Danielle, to know the difference
Just
between
have a
both.
guess, it doesn't matter.
Okay. Shall I say I think it's a Celt then?
Excellent. And that's what most people come to the conclusion of, because we know that Celts would fight with no tops on, that they had sort of curly hair. And we also know that the Romans made this sculpture, and looking at the face of this person, How do you think they're feeling? Happy or sad?
I would say sad to look at around, the mouth.
Yeah, it's a very obvious sad face, isn't it?
Mm.
So the Romans want us to know that this person is sad. What you might notice as well, looking at these arms now, I know it's difficult because this is part of a bigger picture, but it's been broken. It appears that the arms are tied behind the back because you can see this one is kind of disappearing around there. So what our curator thinks is perhaps this is a local person captured by the Romans, perhaps a Celtic hero. Okay. And this is actually possibly the first image of a person from what we now call Wales. So almost the first image of a Welsh person. How do you feel about this first image of a Welsh person, Sue-Ann? How does it make you feel?
Well, obviously it's an important image, but it makes me feel a little bit sad that this is the first picture. If you're saying that the arms are tied behind the back, and the person is sad, it's not
Yeah,
nice, is it?
no, so it's a depicted by a Celtic enemy, essentially, which
Yeah.
was the Romans. So it is a bit sad, but the story gets better, so I'll carry on. If we look now at the next slide, I don't know if anyone knows much about the local Celts. If you look at this map, you can see that at the time, Wales, it wasn't even called Wales, it was kind of made up of lots of different Celtic tribes. And the tribe we're talking about that are down in southeast Wales were the Silures. So they were in the area that we now think of as Newport, Caerleon, okay? The Silures, they're called. And there's one there with no top on. He hasn't got the curly hair, but they've got lots of different hairstyles to the Romans. So if we go to the next slide, I'm going to tell now the Silures themselves didn't have any written histories. Celts told stories. That's how they passed on information. They would remember long stories and pass them down through their families. But a Roman historian called Tacitus tells us that the Silures were a proud and very fierce people. And we actually know that it took that the Silures did win a battle against the Romans once, but the Romans kept coming back and trying, and that went on for about 25 years. So they were a very fierce people that fought back against the Romans. And if we go to the next slide, we can see what else Tacitus said about the Silures. He said they were enraged by much repeated saying of the Roman commander that they must be utterly exterminated. So the Roman wanted to exterminate the Celts. So that's very, very strong words there. And of course, the Romans were very different from the Celts. They spoke different languages. So the Romans at the time spoke mainly Latin. And we've all heard of Latin, but it doesn't survive as a living language today. But the Celtic language, which was like an early form of the Welsh language, that does survive today, as we know. So as the song says, Ni yma o hyd, we are still here. So in a way, the Romans, they didn't succeed to exterminate the Celts, thankfully. So we're all here to talk about it today. And it's a very important kind of story that we're going to start retelling in our museum. So to summarize again, because I've talked about lots of things, the Silures were the tribe in Caerleon, Newport area, 2,000 years ago. The Romans said that the Silures were a tough and strong tribe. Our curator, Mark Lewis, found the important stone sculpture in 2010, and the sculpture itself showed a local person, which we think was a Celt, with their hands tied behind their backs. So good luck in the quiz.
Diolch, Danielle. Right, is everyone ready? The next 4 questions. What was the name of the Celtic tribe local to Caerleon? The Brigantes, the Silures, the Iceni, or the Picts? Interesting names there, Danielle. What was the name of the Celtic tribe local to Caerleon? Yeah, well done. The Silures was the correct answer. 375 of you. Well done. Let's move on to the second question. What did Mark, the curator, notice in the soil during the 2010 excavation? A toy, a golden cup, a large stone that was part of a sculpture, or a hidden map? What did Mark find or notice? Yes, a large stone that was part of a sculpture. Well done, 413 of you. Third question. What does the Roman sculpture from the 2nd century AD show? A modern soldier, a local person with their hands tied behind their back, a Celtic king on a throne, or a school teacher from Cardiff? A local person with their hands tied behind their backs. Well done, 374 of you. And the last question in this round. What did the Romans say about the Silures, the local Celts? That they were lucky and peaceful, that they enjoyed building amphitheatres, that they were a strong and tough tribe, or that they spoke fluent Latin? Yes, that they were a strong and tough tribe. Well done. Let's have a look. How is the scoreboard looking? Wondrous Dragon has come to the top and Groovy Swan in second. Well done to you all. Right, we'll move on to the third round. Diolch, Danielle. Oh, you're on mute, Danielle.
Okay, so now we're moving on to a story from St Fagans National History Museum, or Museum of History. So we're going to talk about an exhibition that was on in the summer, which continues with the theme of Ni Yma o Hyd. We are still here, and you can probably see on this screen now what that theme is. Okay. So we're going to have a look at the story of women's football in Wales. So this exhibition was on during the summer holidays when the women's team were preparing for the Euros in Switzerland. And it's important to note that this exhibition was made in partnership with FAW and Wrexham Museum and Archives. Now, the journey of women's football in Wales has not been easy, but despite everyone and everything, the team has succeeded to make it to a major championship. So let's go and look at that journey through some objects that were collected by these different museums. So the year we're in is 1885, and this is the first known women's football club. It was called the British Ladies Football Club, formed in London. And this is a newspaper clipping showing the article about them. And this is the first time we've ever seen a women's football team mentioned in a newspaper. Does it surprise you, Sue-Ann, that women were playing football in 1885?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes and no, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised there was a team
Yes.
as such. But yeah, so we'll move on now. So then we move forward now into the First World War, so 1914 to 1918. And during this time, of course, lots of men were sent off to war. Women and children stayed at home to sort of support the home front. And women, for the first time, really left their homes or their farms and they began working outside of the home in places like factories. And a big job that lots of women did was working in munition factories. So that's a bit like the word ammunition. But it was basically they were working there to make bombs. So it's quite a dangerous job. And because they were all in factories, they decided, because they were working like a team, they would have football matches against other factories. So you've got Swansea playing against Bristol here at the Vetchfield in Swansea, the old Vetchfield. And they were doing this to raise money to support the war effort. So although it was a very difficult time, lots of women said they enjoyed the kind of independence and the different experiences they were having at the time. So we'll go to the next slide now, because things start to change. So if you look at this badge, it's from the 1920s Welsh team shirt badge. But in the 1920s, so not that long after the First World War, it was suddenly decided, the Football Association decided to ban women from playing football. And they said they thought it was quite unsuitable for females. I don't know if you've ever played football, Sue-Ann, or interested in football.
Not a lot, but I am supportive of Welsh football, ladies and men's, of course. Yeah. So it's
Well,
it's it's sad to see that
yeah, and I'm sure
the
there's
FA did this.
there's many listening now across Wales in different classrooms, boys and girls that love playing football, and then to sort of be told, no, you can't play football, and you certainly can't play for your country. Now, not everybody listened, okay? Um, Again, so first England banned it, then in 1922, Wales did the same and banned it. So lots of women had to hang up their boots. They weren't able to play anymore. These boots, you can see, they're made of leather. They've got studs like the ones we have today. The ball is pretty similar, but not painted. And yeah, so that was kind of not a good time for women's football.
Mhm.
If we move forward then to the 1970s, the FAW decided to lift the ban on women's football. And then here's a picture of the team in 1974, and it was the first friendly between Wales and England. Okay, so the ban had lasted about 50 years, but then finally it was lifted. Women were able to represent their country again. If we go to the next slide, you can see then this isn't a friendly, this is a proper fixture in 1974, 1973 between Republic of Ireland, and we lost 3-2, but it was quite close. And then, of course, in the 1990s, so in the 1970s, people changed their opinions. They thought the ban was a bit old-fashioned and unfair, but there was still a lot of work then that players like Laura McAllister in the 1990s had to do to kind of get people to come and watch football and to support and to fund football like it is today. And some of this only changed quite recently. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see 2022, and you'll see the shirt signed by the women's team. So equal pay was introduced in January 23, so about 3 years ago, when the Football Association for Wales announced a historic agreement to pay men and women the same. And it was great because the men agreed to this as well, and they were very supportive. And in 23, the women almost reached the World Cup. They came very close. But then on the next slide, of course, we know that, so just 2 years after getting paid, they actually qualified for the championship to go to the Euros after beating the Republic of Ireland 2-1. So I'm sure many people listening maybe went to Switzerland in the summer. I did. I had a lovely time. I don't know if you went, Sue-Ann, or...
No, I'm afraid not. No.
Yeah, but it was all the fans were just so happy because we were there, and the achievement was kind of getting there. We had a tough games when we were there. But if you just go back a slide a second, if that's okay. So thinking of all the great players we've had in Wales, which person, male or female, you might have seen the clue, do you think has won the most caps for Wales, Sue-Ann?
Well, I was going to say possibly Gareth Bale because he's very well known in the football
Yeah,
world, isn't he, across the world? But having had a sneak peek there, I think it's a woman.
yeah. So that woman is Jess Fishlock, and
Wow.
she's from Cardiff, and she's actually had 166 caps, where Gareth Bale had 111 caps. So both
Mm.
amazing achievements, of course. Um, and so again, I've discussed lots of things there. So I'm going to give you a useful summary now. So we discussed the football story in Wales about the first British ladies team that started back in 1885, how women had opportunities to play football and raise money for the war effort during the First World War, how there was a ban on playing, but that it was lifted in the 1970s, that the player with the most caps for Wales ever is Jess Fishlock, who's pictured here. Diolch, Jess.
Yeah, weird. I'm sure we have a lot of football fans listening and playing today. Right then, let's get into the last four questions. In what year did the newspaper cutting show the British Ladies Football Club women's team? 1885, 1925, 1965, or 2005? The time goes very quickly on these questions, but the answers are flying in. 1885 was the year of the cutting. Well done. Second question then. Why are women playing football matches? Why were, sorry, women playing football matches during the First World War? To prepare for the Olympic Games, to raise money to support the war effort, to win big prizes, or because men didn't allow them to work? Oh yes, to raise money to support the war effort. Well done to a majority of you there. Right, for third question. What happened in 1970 that helped women's football grow in Wales? They were banned again by the FA. The women's team started playing with a different ball. They were invited to the Olympic Games, or the ban was lifted and women could officially play again. Yeah, they were banned earlier, weren't they, Danielle, from
Yeah,
playing?
it's
But
a,
in
it's a, a tricky one, that question.
yeah, in 1970, the ban was lifted and women could play again. So women's football grew then in Wales. Right then, last question. Who is Wales' most capped player ever? A man or a woman? Men or women? Gareth Bale, Sophie Ingle, Jess Fishlock, or Laura McAllister? Who is Wales' most capped player ever? Well done. Jess Fishlock is Wales' most capped player. Da iawn. Well done to you all. Now then, let's take a look at the podium. Wondrous Dragon in third. Agile Impala in second. And coming out on top today is Astonishing Cap. Well done. If you came in the top 5, remember to email me sue.richards@e-sgol.cymru with the winning nickname, the name of your class, and the name of the school. Thank you very much, Danielle, for those great stories from Amgueddfa Cymru.
Brilliant. And just to give our museums a quick plug before I go, remember, all of you can visit any of our museums for free with your families or with your schools. If your class doesn't win this quiz, teachers, we have a bursary available to pay for some buses, and Sue-Ann will share some information on that. And don't forget, you can also join us through virtual workshops like this one and by looking at lots of our digital resources online. Thanks so much for your time. Diolch pawb.
Diolch Danielle, diolch everyone for joining, and we'll see you in a fortnight, same time, for another quiz with a new set of stories. Diolch bawb.
Ta-ra.